step outside and try it again.
From gritty villains to lovable heroes, what if we told you that some of your favorite Golden Age actors weren't pretending to be tough? Here are 15 actors who became real-life heroes by serving in World War II.
Francis.
Number 14. Richard Burton. What better place to begin than a dive into the fascinating life of Richard Burton, the ultimate Golden Age heartthrob who also happened to be a real-life war hero. Think of Richard Burton as the OG of smoldering intensity on screen. He was one of the most famous actors of the mid-20th century, handsome, eloquent, and with a voice that could turn even the dullest lines into poetry. Richard Burton became famous for his work in Hollywood classics like Cleopatra, yes, the one with Elizabeth Taylor, and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. His acting style was magnetic. Whether he was playing a brooding hero, a tortured lover, or a tragic figure, you couldn't look away. He made audiences feel every emotion, and his intense presence set him apart from his peers. But before he was stealing scenes and hearts on the big screen, Burton served his country during World War II. At the age of 18, he joined the Royal Air Force, RAF, in 1944. Because of his young age, he wasn't sent to combat but was assigned to serve as a navigator in training. Although the war ended before he saw active duty, his military service shaped his sense of discipline and determination, qualities he later brought to his acting. Burton wasn't born into wealth or privilege. He grew up in a coal mining town in Wales and was one of 13 children in his family. So he wasn't just a handsome face. Burton was a self-made star with grit and depth, someone who came from humble beginnings, served his country, and became one of the greatest actors of all time. Number 13. Tony Curtis. Let's just call him the Golden Age heartthrob with $1 million smile and a life that sounds straight out of a Hollywood movie. Known for his good looks, quick wit, and versatility, he starred in classics like Some Like It Hot, yes, the one with Marilyn Monroe, and The Defiant Ones. He could make you laugh, cry, or swoon, all in the same movie. But before all the glitz and glamour, Curtis lived a very different kind of adventure. Born in 1925, Tony Curtis grew up in a tough neighborhood in the Bronx, New York. His family didn't have much money, and life wasn't easy. But Curtis had big dreams and an even bigger drive to escape his rough beginnings. At just 17, Curtis enlisted in the U.S. Navy. He was inspired by the events of Pearl Harbor and wanted to serve his country when the war broke out. He trained as a signalman and joined the crew of the USS Proteus, a submarine tender. Fun fact, one of his missions involved helping rescue survivors from a sunken submarine. After the war, Curtis returned to New York with a GI Bill in hand and a dream in his heart. He studied acting and quickly got noticed for his striking looks and natural talent. Universal Pictures signed him, and before long he became one of the biggest stars of the 1950s and 1960s. His story reminds us that with hard work and a little sparkle, you can make it from the trenches of war to the top of the world. Number 12. Charles Bronson. Known for his roles in movies like The Magnificent Seven, The Great Escape, and Death Wish. He was the kind of guy who didn't need flashy dialogue or over-the-top stunts. His presence alone did all the talking. But before he became Hollywood's go-to tough guy, Bronson had already lived through challenges that could make any movie script look tame. Bronson grew up as the son of a coal miner in Pennsylvania during the Great Depression. Life was rough, so rough that he had to work in the coal mines as a teenager to help support his family. But when World War II came calling, Bronson was ready to take on a new challenge. In 1943, he enlisted in the U.S. Army Air Forces and served as a tail gunner in a B-29 bomber. That's right, he flew in the kind of planes you see in epic war movies, protecting his crew by manning the guns in the most dangerous part of the aircraft. Talk about guts. Bronson flew in over 25 missions in the Pacific Theater and earned a Purple Heart after being injured in the line of duty. After war, Bronson decided to trade in his bomber jacket for something a little more glamorous, an acting career. He studied drama on the GI Bill and eventually made his way to Hollywood. At first, he took small roles, often playing henchmen or villains because of his rugged looks. But soon, his talent and charisma couldn't be ignored. In the 1960s and 1970s, Bronson became an international superstar. He was especially beloved in Europe, where they nicknamed him the Ugly American, in an affectionate way, of course, because of his tough, no-frills demeanor.
I don't know that I should shake your hand. Why not? I'm not sure you're my friend.
What do you mean? I hired a team of detectives to find you, didn't I?
I don't know you.
Number 11. James Duan. Before he became the legendary Scotty, the Star Trek engineer who could fix anything, Duan was a real-life war hero with a story that could outshine any Hollywood script. Born in 1920, Duan's story begins in Vancouver, Canada. When World War II broke out, he joined the Royal Canadian Artillery and became a lieutenant. He was sent to Europe to fight the Nazis, and here's where things get epic. On June 6, 1944, Duan was part of the first wave of troops to land on Juno Beach during the D-Day invasion. Picture this: chaos everywhere, enemy fire raining down, and Duan leading his troops with courage and determination. Here's the kicker: Duan not only survived the brutal battle, but also pulled off a daring move that sounds straight out of a movie. He shot 2 snipers, helped secure the beach, and kept his cool under fire. But the war left its mark. Later that night, he was accidentally shot by a nervous sentry. The shots took out his middle finger and injured his leg, but Duan didn't let it slow him down. After the war, Duan decided to trade in his artillery uniform for a stage costume. Using his GI Bill, he studied acting and discovered his knack for accents and voices. Hollywood took notice, and in 1966, he landed his most famous role, Scotty, on Star Trek. Fun fact, he always hid his missing finger on Star Trek. Did you ever notice? James Duan wasn't just an actor. He was a true-life hero who turned hardship into inspiration. From braving the horrors of war to boldly going where no one had gone before, he showed that courage and creativity can take you far.
What?
Nothing, Garnish. Forget it. Oh, Lord! Why have you chosen me? What would you have me do for you?
Number 10. Mel Brooks. You might know him as the king of comedy, but he didn't just make us laugh. He helped take down the Nazis. That's right. Before Mel Brooks became the comedic genius behind movies like The Producers and Blazing Saddles, he was a young soldier in World War II, cracking jokes and fighting for freedom. If we were to title the chapter of Mel Brooks in World War II, we would call it Comedy Meets Courage, and it begins with a skinny young man called Melvin Kaminsky joining the U.S. Army as a combat engineer. His job? Clearing mines and building bridges so Allied troops could advance. Not exactly a laugh-a-minute gig, but Mel handled it with his trademark humor. Imagine this: you're a 19-year-old kid in Europe surrounded by danger. Most people would panic, but not Brooks. He used his humor to keep his fellow soldiers' spirits high, telling jokes and singing songs to lighten the mood. It was like he was rehearsing for a future stand-up gig, but the stakes were way higher. After the war, Mel returned to Brooklyn with a head full of stories and a heart full of dreams. He started his entertainment career as a writer for TV's Your Show of Shows, where he honed his razor-sharp wit. But his real breakthrough came when he wrote and directed The Producers in 1967, a movie about 2 scheming producers who try to make the worst musical ever. Mel Brooks isn't just a comedy genius. He's proof that laughter can be a superpower. He survived a world war, used humor to fight back against hate, and went on to create movies that have made millions laugh for generations.
Man of, and I admire the speeches he makes, and I admire the big house he lives in. But if you're saving it all for him, honey, you got your account in the wrong bank.
Number 9. Paul Newman. Newman was the kind of guy who could charm anyone. He had dazzling blue eyes, raced cars like a pro, and even made salad dressings. Most impressively, he served his country in one of history's most epic conflicts. Paul Newman was one of the biggest stars of Hollywood's golden age, known for iconic films like Cool Hand Luke, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and The Hustler. With his rugged good looks, effortless charisma, and undeniable talent, Newman became one of Hollywood's most beloved leading men. But before he was lighting up the screen, he was helping light up the skies, literally. Before Newman became a star, he joined the U.S. Navy in 1943 when he was just 18 years old. He originally dreamed of being a pilot, but there was one small problem: his color blindness. Turns out even those famous blue eyes couldn't solve that issue. Instead, Newman became a radio man and rear gunner on torpedo bombers, which was still a super dangerous and important role. Here's where things get really wild. In May 1945, Newman was stationed on the USS Bunker Hill during the Battle of Okinawa, one of the fiercest battles in the Pacific. But on the day of the deadly kamikaze attack, Newman's squadron wasn't on the carrier. They'd been grounded due to bad weather. Talk about a lucky break. The attack destroyed much of Bunker Hill, but Newman survived and went on to complete his service honorably. After the war, Newman went to college, studied acting, and quickly rose through the Hollywood ranks. He had this incredible ability to play both charming rogues and deeply complex characters, making him one of the most versatile actors of his time.
March either, and I know the rules.
Why don't you have to march?
Because condemned men don't have to drill.
Number 8. Lee Marvin. Without a doubt, Marvin was the ultimate tough guy of Hollywood's golden age, but he didn't just play warriors and outlaws. He was one in real life. Before becoming a movie star, Lee Marvin was a real-deal Marine who faced the horrors of World War II. If you love movies with tough-as-nails heroes, Lee Marvin is your guy. He starred in classics like The Dirty Dozen, Point Blank, and Cat Ballou. Interestingly, he won an Oscar for that one. But before he became Hollywood's favorite bad boy, Marvin was living an even tougher role, that of a U.S. Marine. He joined the U.S. Marine Corps at 18 and was sent straight to the Pacific Theater, one of the most dangerous parts of the war. In 1944, Marvin fought in the brutal Battle of Saipan, where the Marines faced fierce resistance from Japanese forces. During the battle, Marvin was seriously wounded when a machine gun bullet tore through his sciatic nerve. Imagine the pain of that. Now imagine crawling to safety under enemy fire. That's the kind of grit Marvin had. He spent over a year recovering from his injuries and was awarded the Purple Heart for his bravery. After the war, Marvin wasn't sure what to do with his life. He ended up working as a plumber's assistant before trying his hand at acting. It turned out he had a natural talent for it, and Hollywood loved his rugged, no-nonsense style. By the 1950s, Marvin was starring in westerns, war movies, and thrillers, always bringing a sense of authenticity to his roles. Whether he was leading a band of misfits into battle or cracking jokes as a drunken gunslinger, Marvin brought something real to the screen. He went from fighting on the front lines to becoming one of Hollywood's most iconic stars, all while staying true to himself.
But you must be oh so smart, or oh so pleasant. Well, for years I was smart. I recommend pleasant.
Number 7. Jimmy Stewart. Jimmy Stewart was the definition of a classic movie star. Known for his warm, everyman charm and that signature soft-spoken drawl, he starred in iconic films like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, Rear Window, and The Philadelphia Story. Here's the deal. Stewart loved flying. He earned his private pilot's license before he even became a big star. So when World War II broke out, he didn't wait to get drafted. He enlisted in the U.S. Army Air Corps in 1941. And get this, Stewart was already famous when he joined. He was the first major Hollywood actor to enlist during World War II. Stewart started as a flight instructor, but he wanted to be in the thick of the action. After lots of training and hard work, he was assigned to the 445th Bombardment Group as a B-24 pilot, flying bombing missions over Nazi-occupied Europe. His missions included bombing crucial enemy supply lines and factories. Imagine the guts it took to fly a massive bomber while dodging enemy fire at 20,000 feet. For his bravery and leadership, Stewart earned numerous medals, including the Distinguished Flying Cross and the Air Medal. He eventually rose to the rank of Brigadier General in the Air Force Reserve, making him the highest-ranking actor in military history. But what made Stewart even more incredible was his humility. He rarely talked about his service, even though he had every reason to brag. For him, it wasn't about glory, it was about doing what was right. After the war, Stewart returned to Hollywood and delivered some of the greatest performances of his career. His experiences in the war added depth and vulnerability to his acting, especially in It's a Wonderful Life. Remember the iconic scene where George Bailey breaks down crying? Stewart later admitted that he channeled his real-life memories of war and loss into the performance.
Better take his gun. He's killed someone.
You won't need to take my gun. Won't need this anymore either.
Number 6. Henry Fonda. You might know him from iconic films like The Grapes of Wrath or 12 Angry Men, but did you know that during World War II, Fonda swapped Hollywood for the high seas to serve in the U.S. Navy? That's right. Before he became a screen legend, he was a real-life sailor, helping America win the war. It's quite a fascinating story. Henry Fonda was one of Hollywood's greatest leading men. He was the kind of actor who made you believe in justice and doing the right thing. But what made him so good at playing these roles? Maybe it's because he wasn't just acting. He lived those values, especially during World War II. When World War II began, Fonda was already a big deal in Hollywood, starring in hits like Young Mr. Lincoln. But while many actors stayed in Tinseltown making war films, Fonda decided that wasn't enough for him. He wanted to really help. So, in 1942, at the age of 37, notably older than most recruits, Fonda joined the U.S. Navy. He said, "I don't want to be in a fake war in a studio." Fonda served as the quartermaster on the USS Satterley, a destroyer that was part of the D-Day invasion in 1944. Fonda was there on D-Day, helping guide his ship through one of the most critical battles in history. Later, he was transferred to Air Combat Intelligence, where he helped plan missions and gather crucial information. He wasn't just brave, he was smart too. After the war, Fonda returned to Hollywood and picked up right where he left off, delivering one iconic performance after another.
Slaves, you could build an army. But I have built a city. 16 of these lions of Pharaoh will guard its gates.
Number 5. Charlton Heston. Best known for his epic roles in movies like Ben-Hur and The Ten Commandments, Heston was another Golden Age hero who served in World War II. With his booming voice, chiseled jawline, and commanding screen presence, he had all it took to become a star. But it would take serving his country in World War II before he would set his sights on conquering Hollywood. Heston was just 19 years old when he joined the U.S. Army Air Forces in 1944. With a passion for flying, he trained as a radio operator and aerial gunner on B-25 bombers. Heston wasn't in the thick of battle in Europe or the Pacific, but his job was still essential. He was stationed in the Aleutian Islands of Alaska, a cold and treacherous place where the U.S. kept a close watch on potential Japanese attacks. While it wasn't as glamorous as Hollywood, it was crucial to America's defense during the war. It also taught him discipline, teamwork, and resilience, qualities that would serve him well both in life and in his acting career. After the war, Heston used the GI Bill to study drama at Northwestern University. Soon after, he started landing roles in theater and live television before breaking into the movies. By the 1950s, Heston was a bona fide star, known for his heroic roles in historical and biblical epics. His 1959 portrayal of Judah Ben-Hur in Ben-Hur won him an Academy Award for Best Actor, and the chariot race scene is still one of the greatest action sequences in film history. If you made it this far, hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any updates from us. Number 4. Russell Johnson. Russell Johnson was one of those actors who could do it all: drama, comedy, and everything in between. You might know Johnson as the Professor from Gilligan's Island. But did you know that long before he was solving problems with coconuts and building radios out of bamboo, he was a real-life hero serving in World War II? This guy went from dodging enemy fire in the skies to dodging Gilligan's antics on a deserted island. At 18, he joined the U.S. Army Air Forces and became a B-24 bomber pilot. Johnson flew missions in the Pacific Theater where his job was to drop bombs on enemy targets while dodging anti-aircraft fire. It was dangerous, high-stakes work, but Johnson handled it like a pro. One of the most dramatic moments of Johnson's service came when his plane was shot down over the Philippines. Johnson and his crew crash-landed, and though they survived, Johnson was seriously injured. He broke both ankles and had to be rescued and transported to safety. For his bravery and service, Johnson earned a Purple Heart. After the war, Johnson used the GI Bill to study acting. He started out in small TV roles before landing parts in westerns, science fiction films, and eventually his most iconic gig as the Professor on Gilligan's Island. As the Professor, Johnson became a beloved TV icon, showing off his smarts and inventiveness while stranded on the island. His time in the military may even have inspired his resourcefulness on screen. After all, he knew what it was like to survive under tough conditions.
Want to step outside and try it again?
Number 3. Audie Murphy. Let's talk about Audie Murphy, the guy who was basically Captain America in real life. Before he became an actor, Audie Murphy was one of the most decorated soldiers of World War II. And when we say decorated, we mean he had so many medals they probably weighed him down. Audie Murphy wasn't just a Golden Age actor, he was a full-blown legend. You've probably seen him in classic westerns like The Red Badge of Courage or To Hell and Back. Fun fact, the latter was based on his own life story. But before Hollywood came calling, Murphy was just a scrappy kid from Texas who answered the call to serve in World War II. Murphy enlisted in the Army at just 17. Yes, he lied about his age to get in. Murphy fought in some of the toughest battles in Europe, including the invasion of Sicily, the liberation of France, and the push into Germany. He quickly rose through the ranks, earning a reputation for being fearless under fire. By the end of the war, Murphy had earned 33 medals, including the Medal of Honor, the highest award for bravery in the U.S. military. He was only 19 when he received it. After the war, Murphy became a Hollywood actor. At first, he wasn't sure about it, he was pretty shy, but he gave it a shot and ended up starring in over 40 films. One of his biggest hits was To Hell and Back, where he played himself, reliving his own war experiences. So the next time you watch an action-packed movie or a classic western, think about Audie Murphy, the guy who lived through battles more intense than anything Hollywood could dream up and still came out swinging.
Go, 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 all you little demons, little demons.
Number 2. Donald Pleasence. Whether he was chasing after Michael Myers or plotting to take over the world in a Bond movie, Pleasence had an unforgettable presence in Hollywood. Donald Pleasence wasn't just your average actor. He had a knack for playing creepy, mysterious roles, but his career was full of surprises. We bet you didn't know that before he was making audiences nervous, he was risking his life in World War II. In 1940, when Pleasence was just 24 years old, he joined the Royal Air Force, RAF, to fight in World War II. Unlike his calm and calculating characters on screen, Pleasence was flying high in the sky as a bomber pilot during some of the war's most dangerous missions. In 1944, Pleasence's life took a dramatic turn when his plane was shot down over France. He was captured by the Germans and became a prisoner of war. That sounds like something right out of a spy movie, right? But this wasn't fiction. Pleasence spent months in a German POW camp. During his time there, he faced unimaginable conditions, but his resilience and courage never wavered. Eventually, Pleasence was freed when the war ended, but the experience stuck with him for the rest of his life. He once admitted that his time as a POW helped shape his ability to play intense and emotional characters on screen. After the war, Pleasence returned to England and started his acting career, first on stage and then in movies. His big break came when he landed roles in major films like The Great Escape. In this one, he played a captured British soldier, drawing from his real-life experiences. He soon became one of the most sought-after character actors in Hollywood, appearing in everything from drama to horror to James Bond films.
Don't want to fight, take it outside. I'm gonna cut this wop's heart out. Anybody steps in here, I give it to him first.
One step further, Fatso, and I'm gonna debrain you.
Number 1. Ernest Borgnine. Ernest Borgnine had a career that spanned decades, and he was famous for playing the kind of guy who didn't back down from a fight. With his broad shoulders, square jaw, and gruff voice, Borgnine was often cast as a tough guy or a villain, but he was so much more than that. Before all the Hollywood fame and awards, Borgnine was already a real-life action hero serving in the U.S. Navy during World War II. In 1941, Borgnine was just a regular 18-year-old trying to make a living in New York, but when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, he enlisted in the U.S. Navy, a destroyer escort ship, and he saw some serious action during the war. His job was that of a gunner, and the life of a gunner during World War II was anything but easy. Imagine being on a ship in the middle of the ocean, trying to shoot down enemy planes and defend your ship from attack. Sounds pretty intense, right? Borgnine was part of the Navy's efforts in the Battle of the Atlantic, where Allied ships fought to keep vital supply lines open and defeat the Germans. He experienced a lot of close calls with enemy fire, and he was on the licked field during some major engagements, including convoy protection and anti-submarine missions. After the war, Borgnine came back to the States and used the GI Bill to study acting. He quickly found himself in Hollywood, where his intense presence and unique voice landed him parts in movies and TV shows. By the time the 1950s rolled around, he was a huge star, with memorable roles in films like From Here to Eternity and Marty. From defending his country to portraying unforgettable characters on the big screen, Borgnine showed us that true strength comes from resilience, kindness, and a willingness to do the right thing, even when it's tough. Inspired by any of these names? Do share your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button. You also can't miss the next video on screen.